Hello everyone, welcome to yet another video. Today we're going to be talking about Riders of Icarus, the free-to-play MMO that came out on Steam just a few days ago. It was originally ported from Korea, which still has a lot of content that we don't have in the West. I'm going to talk about that later though. I made a small tutorial on this game a few days ago, and I thought it was time to talk about what I actually think about this game. So after I made the tutorial, I completed most of the game, or at least what we have access to now. I'm about level 25. I've played about 30 hours, maybe a bit more. Steam says I've played 30, but I think I played about 40 hours in total. Now, I want to talk about my experience. I want to talk about what I think is really good about this game, why I still want to continue playing it after they update the game to add a high level cap, and why I'm excited for the future of this game. But also, there's a few things I have very big problems with, and I'll get into that in a bit. Now, from the footage you've seen in the background, you've probably noticed that the game looks very generic, looks very WoW-esque. It looks like every other MMO you would find out there, and that is true to an extent. The game has a very uninspired combat system, which is pretty bog standard, even though they pretend you can switch to an action mode, which is really just the standard MMO combat system from a different perspective. The questing system is pretty much the same. Uninspired is what I would call it. It's basically mostly kill quests, which I don't have a problem with. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, basic kill quests are the cancer of MMOs, they make the game boring, because if you are scared of repetitive content in an MMO, you're really playing the wrong genre, in my opinion. Now, there's also a story in the game, which is basically uninspired as well. It's pretty standard. The princess gets captured, you have to go and save her kind of plot. The story does what it's meant to, provide an excuse for you to move out into the kingdom and explore the different areas that this world has. Now, 2 minutes into the video, we're finally going to talk about why I not love, but actually really like this game. The mount system. The ability you have in the game to basically tame every creature you find. There are a few exceptions, like obviously you can't tame like a random bandit or certain creatures that are really important for quests and that stuff. But you can tame pretty much every creature, and on your screen right now you should be seeing an example of all the different creatures you can actually capture. And bear in mind, the creatures I'm showing you are not every one of them. There are different rare mounts and different common mounts I haven't found yet and I haven't actually tamed yet, which is why I'm still interested in the game. I'm eager to find all these mounts, to tame them and to add them to my collection. It's really a sort of Pokemon vibe that the game really manages to achieve. Besides pandering to the gotta catch 'em all crowd, it's also very good at creating social situations and making you interact with other players. A lot of the mounts are not easy to find and not easy to capture. They may require special items, and the game may not even tell you where you can find these items. Since the game right now has not been out for very long, there aren't a lot of tutorials, there aren't a lot of wikis to tell you where you can get these items, so you're gonna ask other players. I am really glad that the game does this at the moment, because I'm used to MMOs where you really don't have to interact with anyone, like Guild Wars 2 or to some extent World of Warcraft. And the dungeon system, currently you don't have to actually interact with anyone unless you go raiding, which is something that most players won't actually do. I've interacted in Riders of Icarus with way more people during my first 25 levels than I ever have in any MMO ever, which is actually saying a lot. I have of course been in guilds, but that's not really something you need to do. This game kinda forces you to go ask people if you want the good mounts, if you want the secrets that the game doesn't specifically tell you how to obtain. This mount system and the social interaction that comes with it is what really saves the game from being very mundane, from the boring combat system to the mundane questing and not too interesting enemies that you're going to be fighting throughout the game. But in turn, it really makes up for it a lot. It what really keeps you going throughout the game. As you may be level 10, you'll see an high level player who may have a bigger mount than you, may have a dragon, and you are gonna say, holy shit, I want that dragon. I want to be him. I want to find that dragon, tame it, and make it my very own. And throughout your leveling, you're constantly meeting these players and are being encouraged to push on, to push to even better mounts, to push to even higher levels. And the satisfaction that comes from actually achieving these goals, finding the dragons, taming them, is really fulfilling. Now let's talk quickly about the dungeon system. There's about 4 dungeons in the game right now, 3 of which I've played. The dungeons are standard, pretty box standard, but they play into the mount system very well. There are special mounts you can get in the dungeon by running them over and over again. There are different difficulties, and the rewards you get from dungeons are very satisfying, and it's pretty rare that I go out of a dungeon saying, wow, that was not worth it at all. So the dungeons does what they're supposed to do. They are really good at leveling you up and providing a good group experience, and kind of forces you to communicate with the group, since there are side quests in the dungeon that some people may need to do, and that some people may need to get a certain mount or get a certain item, so you go a different route in the dungeon. Besides that, the dungeons provide a really good break from the usual leveling, and it keeps the game from getting too repetitive, and I'm really satisfied with the whole system in general. Now, Riders of Icarus does indeed have crafting in it. Now I want to quickly talk about why I'm excited for the future. Now, we know that the game has about 65 levels of future content that we haven't actually seen yet. The current level cap is, as I said, 25, which is pretty low, and it's not really a lot of content for an MMO, but the fact that we know there is 65 levels of content that hasn't been properly translated and rebuilt for new regions yet means that we are gonna enjoy a steady stream of content until we are caught up with the rest of the regions that play this game, which is of course Korea, where the game originally was released and is still in development at the moment. As someone who's already spent a lot of time on the beta as it is right now, it's hard to not get excited about the future of this game. Even harder when you look at the screenshots on their website of the mounts, the regions, and the possible dungeons that we're going to be seeing in the next few months. I encourage everyone, future and current players, to go look in this article. I'll link it in the description below. It's full of good stuff, full of good info about the content that we're going to be receiving in the future. It also has a lot of info about the future business plans and business model for this free-to-play MMO, which is incidentally something we're going to talk about right now. So, the business model. This tends to be the big elephant in the room when you're talking free-to-play MMOs, and especially ones from Asia. But this time around, I'm happy to say they pretty much nailed it, despite what a few reviewers on Steam will have you think in what I can only hope are misinformed posts. This game is not actually pay to win. The only pay to win aspect that the game has been promised by the developers several times that they're gonna be removed during the next few updates, and the premium currency that you use to buy cosmetics and if you skip faster throughout the game, like revive instantly and those kind of things, the currency you use for those things you actually get through achievements and just doing random stuff in the game. I never have had a problem where I ran out of the currency and where I couldn't use it. Of course, if you want to pay for more bigger things, you have to save it up. But again, it's a currency like any other that you actually get through achievements. So it isn't really pay to win, it's play the game and you will do fine. Even the few things that you could consider pay to win are very minor at worst. It's basically skins that give you a bonus for your mounts, which is pretty useless to begin with, or it will be boost to individual items that you can equip. These boosts have again been promised several times that they're gonna be removed or gonna be made easy to do, so you don't actually have to use the premium currency. Again, this does not really have a big effect on the game since PvP is not in the game yet. If they start implementing PvP before they remove these features, then we can talk about being pay to win. But right now, it's not really that big of a problem. So yeah, all in all, I can basically say that I think the business model is acceptable. It's not the best one we've ever seen. There are definitely some things that you should be able to have without having to pay for them, but those things don't impact the game in a huge and significant way. So I'm satisfied again with this business model. It's not something that ever annoyed me throughout the game, and it's not something that I have a feeling is gonna annoy me in the future. So it's pretty good. Now, as I said in the beginning of the video, there are a few things that I have big problems with in this game. The first being the optimization of the game. I personally, and I have seen other people have this problem as well, have big frame drops when I turn around and when I sometimes fly around on my mount. It's not a constant problem and it doesn't happen in some zones. Configuring the settings and messing with graphical options don't really seem to do anything about this. I did eventually figure out some sort of workaround, but it does tend to make the game very unstable, and it did actually crash my entire computer at one point. I haven't seen the developers mention anything about this, and I really hope this is something that's just gonna get fixed as we go throughout the beta, because right now this is something I have to deal with pretty much every time I open the game. The other big problem I have is the constant gold spammers, bots and scammers that you're gonna find in this game. They are pretty much everywhere. Throughout the gameplay you've been seeing throughout this video, you should be seeing the chat being filled up with red text. That is basically gold sellers and gold bots that are just spamming the chat with websites where you can go and buy gold against the terms of service. You might not think that this is a big problem, but when the chat is constantly filled with spammers and you're trying to communicate with your group or with someone you're just talking to in game, it kind of stops the social aspect of the game completely and just makes talking to other people really annoying. The developers have released an update to try and deal with this, but time will tell if this is actually going to get fixed permanently. So all in all, it's a pretty generic MMO, held up by a good mountain system and then again pulled down by a few optimization problems and a lot of gold spammers. Anyhow, I'm gonna keep playing it and it's probably gonna be something I'm gonna be playing for a while. If anything in this video piqued your interest, the game will be in the description down below. It'll take you straight to the game's website, but it is also on Steam and you can find it there. It's free to play. Have a good day and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye.